Welcome back to this episode of The Self-Led Leader. I'm excited to bring you this episode today because it's 2026, new year, new me energy. And if you're anything like me, you've already set the goals that you have for yourself for the year. And that's why this is an extremely important time to talk about what it's going to take for you to actually achieve all your goals this year. So in this episode, I'm going to be unpacking exactly what you need to know to make 2026 your best year yet, and how to optimize it using your personal prerequisites and not someone else's generic advice. Let's get right into it. Welcome to The Self-Led Leader, a podcast for high performers who want to lead from alignment, not expectation. I'm Dr. Christina Ady, a social psychologist, and I'm here to help you lead with clarity, not chaos. This show is about what happens before the strategy, your mindset, your nervous system, the inner leadership that shapes everything you say and do. Because presence isn't about being loud, it's about being aligned. Let's get right into it. If you're anything like me, you've probably already set your goals for the year. Maybe your goals are so grand and you have broken it down into so many to-dos that you've filled more than an entire page and your list is just running long. Don't be overwhelmed if that's you. Because most leaders and the leaders that I work with, they don't struggle with setting goals. They have high standards. They have high expectations. They have goals that they want to meet quite clearly. And the struggle isn't with setting the goals. The issue that they experience is with the consistency to maintain progress towards those goals once real life and real work pressure hits. The issue that I see, the issue that I have consistently experienced as well, is that people try to figure out a way to optimize their goals based on the advice that other people use. And they don't consider the most important foundational aspect of goal setting, their own personal prerequisites. Now, personal prerequisites is a term that I have coined to really help you understand your own behavioral patterns that create the prerequisite for what you need in order to be able to do these new things effectively. So with goal setting, most goals don't require you to do the same thing that you're already doing. For example, if you're already leading a team and you want your team to generate a better product this year, yes, some of the work will be the same, but there's always some sort of novel aspect to the goal. Because if you were doing the same thing that you've already been doing, you wouldn't have this goal for yourself. And the fact that it requires something new, some kind of new behavior, some kind of shift in your behavioral patterns, is already an indication that there is room for resistance and psychological error to come into play. But most people overlook this fact. So when you are setting goals for yourself, depending on what sort of goal setting advice you follow, you've likely heard things like, maintaining your discipline, staying motivated, coming up with systems to be consistent, considering the higher self, next level version of you who is doing those things and taking on the identity of that. And all of this advice can be great. All of this advice can be effective, with the caveat that you implement this advice if you understand your own personal prerequisites. Otherwise, you will find yourself burning out. You will find yourself getting frustrated. You will find yourself just not doing it and not understanding why. And then months down the line, being frustrated, feeling like a failure because you didn't do the things that you set out to do. And the reason that you didn't do it is because you overlooked your own behavioral patterns. So let's unpack exactly what I mean by this. You see, consistency as a behavior comes down to your identity and how you see yourself performing that behavior. So when you're trying to build systems, when you're working towards your goals, when you are doing something new, it is going to be challenging and it's going to make you question yourself, because psychologically there is going to be a clash between your new way of doing things and your old way of doing things. And this creates psychological incongruence. And anytime there's incongruence, you feel frustrated, you feel like you're not sure what's wrong, and you always default back to your previous habits. That's why consistency isn't about discipline or motivation. That's why it breaks down when your behaviors are trying to build an identity that doesn't operate how you prefer it to operate. In the past, you haven't failed because you were bad at making new habits. You failed because you were trying to build habits in a way that clashed with how you fundamentally operate. So let's break this down a little bit further. Think back to your university or school days. In the first year of your program, you had to take certain courses that became the foundation of the future courses. And if you wanted to take, let's say, advanced chemistry or psychology course, you couldn't take those courses until you had taken the right prerequisites first. You function in the exact same way. So here's what I want you to understand about your personal prerequisites. This is how you automatically function. This is the behavioral patterns that you have consistently had over the past 5, 10, 20, 30 years. Think of this as your default operating system. It's your emotional patterns. It's your default emotional responses. It's your default stress tolerance levels. It's your self-concept and how you see yourself. If you think back, it's historically what has made you feel safe, capable, valued versus not. And these are not preferences. These are actual psychological requirements that you have for yourself. Now, here's why they matter. I want you to think back to the last 3 to 5 years and look at the things that you have succeeded in, the things that you have excelled in, versus the things that were challenging, the things that were consistently a little bit more of a failure, the things that you just couldn't figure out why you weren't excelling in despite your best intentions. And what you'll notice is that there are differences in your emotional and behavioral patterns that dictated why some things were easier to succeed in and some were chronically challenging. That's why if you're trying to follow generic productivity advice or generic be more disciplined, have more motivation advice, it won't work long term because it is overlooking the most foundational aspect of behavioral change, and that is your own behavioral patterns. So let me give you some examples of what your personal prerequisites can actually look like in action. And I'm going to use myself as an example to try and help you understand this, not just theoretically and conceptually, but emotionally as well. So for 2026, I have set the goal for myself to write at least 2, maybe 3 books. Now, in 2025, I had the exact same goal for myself that I did not meet. In 2025, I had the exact same goal for myself that I technically failed on because I don't have a single manuscript fully written yet. Just some wonderful ideas that are bouncing around in my mind. And this is where it gets really interesting. So it's the exact same goal. I want to write at least 2 books. Now, clearly, I need to figure out first why 2025 failed and how I can do it different in 2026. So this is where most people start. And typically it sounds something like, well, last year I didn't write consistently. I had a lot of ideas, but I got busy. Maybe in 2026, I just need a consistent writing block of time. So maybe every Monday, I will sit down and write consistently, right? That seems logical. Most of us are logical people. That seems like it's an adequate answer to be able to move. But this is where behavioral prerequisites come in. So sometimes you might need to have emotional clarity or feel like you're emotionally safe before you're able to proceed with taking action. Some people feel like they need that logical clarity, that insight, that understanding that they fully know what they're doing inside and out like the back of their hand before they can take action. That's where things like analysis paralysis, can get you. Some people need a structure, like they need that time block every Monday at 10 o'clock in order to feel like they will sit and do it. Some people feel like they need that sense of self-concept and self-trust where I have to think of myself as a writer before I sit down to write. No matter how much you work towards your goals, no matter what you are thinking, your behavioral patterns, your personal prerequisites will always come back to get you. and they're sneaky, so you have to watch out for them. Now, going back to my example, in 2025, I did not have a single writing block of time scheduled out. I had too many ideas in my mind, and I was stuck in analysis paralysis. And I did sit many times staring at a blank cursor, staring at the page. So if I was to look at those patterns, what does that tell you about me and the personal prerequisites that I have? Number one, I definitely need clarity and a deep understanding of what I am talking about to feel like I am certain in the topic I'm explaining before I sit down and write about it. And then if I think back further, I can see the same pattern happening going back years, even while I was getting my PhD and I had to write academic papers consistently. I would always save the sort of theoretical, conceptual explanations to the end because those felt like the most challenging sections for me. So that is a pattern for me that I need to identify and that I need to incorporate into my goal setting for 2026. So when I am sitting down and planning my goal for writing at least 2 books, I then need to get into the practical. And this is where most people have the most fun, right? So let's say your goal is to write 2 books. The easiest thing to do is to break it up into 6-month intervals. January to June, you are writing book 1. July to December, you are writing book 2. Maybe then you even break it down into 2, 2, and 2-month intervals, where the first 2 months you are outlining, you're meeting the prerequisite of needing clarity, you are writing, getting that accountability, getting that feedback, and then you are editing, getting some insights, giving the draft to people to read, to get some feedback on it. Can you see how breaking it down a little bit more strategically in terms of the meaning and the behavioral pattern that helps me plan my goal in a way that will actually work for me? Because yes, I could talk about all the discipline and all the motivation and tell myself that every Monday at 10 o'clock, I'm sitting down to write for an hour. And every Wednesday at 2 o'clock, I'm going to, edit and brainstorm. But if I discount the importance of my own personal patterns and the types of behaviors that I am consistently doing, that means that the time blocks just will not work for me. And the next thing I know, it'll be August or September, and I won't even have the draft of my first book done. So when you're thinking about your goals for 2026, I really want you to consider your own past patterns, to really consider what are your personal prerequisites, what are the things that you need to do for yourself to ensure that the way that you're working towards your goals becomes consistent and consistent in a way that works for you. Now, there's one more thing that I really want to say that is extremely important to understand. Anytime you are working on a new goal, it typically requires a new set of actions from you. Anytime something requires a new set of actions from you, it challenges your pre-existing ideas, beliefs, and norms. Now, this is important because most people overlook this. They think that they can just start a new habit, they can do things differently, and if they just stick it out for 21 days, the habit will be formed and everything will be easy from there. But that's not how it works, because psychologically, our brains are wired for us to try and do things as easily and as smoothly as possible. Anytime we introduce any new behaviors, any new goals, any new attempted habits, it creates a space between what we are used to and what we are trying to do. And that space creates psychological incongruence within us. There's a reason why pretending feels so uncomfortable. And there's a reason why it doesn't last. That's why the psychological prerequisites are the true bridge between getting you from where you are now to being the kind of person that you hope to be in order to reach your goals. So I want you to take some time today to think about the last 3 to 5 years and just be honest with yourself, because again, this is all just important data. This is how you optimize your own behavioral patterns so that you actually achieve the kind of success you're hoping for and working towards, and the kind of success that you know you're meant to live up to, the kind of success that lives up to the standards that you have set for yourself. And that's by really understanding what is it that you require from yourself with your thoughts, with your actions, with your behaviors, with your beliefs? Let's go back to my book example. I know for myself that it's hard for me to have a set time consistently every week. And so I know that for myself. If I was to set a time every single week to write and then have life come up, I would be doing myself a major disservice. I would feel like I was failing, and I would essentially be setting myself up for failure. But if I can instead consider my personal prerequisites, know that I need moments of flow and creativity, and instead of having a set time every week, if I just prioritized it and gave myself scaffolding without strict structure, then maybe one week I would write on a Tuesday. Another week I would write on a Thursday. The third week I might skip it if it was just hard. But if I prioritize the scaffolding that gives me the room and the flexibility that I know I need for my own personal creativity and lifestyle, I am way more likely to stick to it, and I'm way more likely to succeed with it. And so that's what I want to leave you with here today. As you consider 2026, as you think about the type of person that you would like to be this time next year, I want you to really think about what it will take, not outside of you, but within you. What are the habits that you have that are so deeply ingrained in you that rather than trying to fix them completely, you might as well optimize them and use them? What are the preferences that you naturally have that are going to guide your decision making throughout the entire year? How can you optimize for that? Whether that is logically, whether that is somatically, whether that is emotionally. What do you actually need for yourself to feel like you are ready and capable to proceed on your goals? The answer lies in your behavioral patterns, in your emotional patterns, and in your personal prerequisites. Now, if you need any help figuring out what that is, I am more than happy to do that with you. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, send me an email. I hope you found this useful, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.